And we are live in this 27th webinar already. Happy to have you here, young Kees de Jager from Dubai, all the way from Dubai, and Yuri van Geest from Rotterdam. And people are walking in the chat, so happy to have you here in this webinar about e-commerce. Of course, the situation in the world about COVID, it's still not going better, even worse. So we thought about why not organizing this webinar about e-commerce. What is there to do? The trends online, and let's just start with the introduction for people who don't know young Kees de Jager. Most Dutch people and even the Belgian people know you from your, as the Dutch Minister of Finance, and now, I met you in the COVID time. You are in Dubai since the beginning of this year.
I've been known as Finance Minister and State Secretary of Finance in the Netherlands, but actually I've always been an entrepreneur by heart. I had finance in my head, but also carried technology in my heart. Already at the age of 8, I started my own very small company. But then when I was 21, I started during my studies my technology internet companies, and they are still there. They're growing very, very fast internationally. And that's one of the reasons that I'm in Dubai, because we have started Asia Pacific operations also. And I'm helping investments between the emerging markets of Asia, Middle East, but there's also a lot of money there, and Europe. And of course, Dubai is a great hub because it's exactly in the middle. It's the largest international airport in the world. So it enables me, well, besides COVID-19, of course, that was a little bit of a disruption, but it enables me to fly anywhere very quickly and also be in touch both in Asian as well as in European time zones at one location.
Beautiful. And we know you that you suddenly decided to go into politics because of the Prime Minister Balkenende. And I still, what was the reason? Because you feel like an IT entrepreneur, and then you think, why did you take that step?
Well, I participated in, also founded by the cabinet Balkenende, before that, the innovation platform, which was the triple helix, knowledge institutions, universities, and colleges, large companies, multinationals like Philips and Shell, and also they wanted a real IT entrepreneur, which I was asked for, and ministers and the Prime Minister. And I had quite a bit of criticism about the investment climate, on how in the Netherlands was dealt with innovation, the combination between universities and entrepreneurs, but especially also their support for startups, for tech startups, but also the Dutch tax climate was absolutely not helping startups at all. So I had a lot of criticism, and then at some point in time, I received another phone call of Prime Minister Balkenende, and he asked me, can you join the cabinet, and you will become the boss of the tax administration and tax legislation, 35,000 people. At that time, I only was responsible for 250 people in my own company. Then you have always had a lot of criticism. We sometimes we listened, sometimes we didn't. But then you can do it yourself. And because you had a lot of criticism, now you cannot say no, because you have now the opportunity to change yourself, the policies in the Netherlands. And then I said, I remember this phone call very vividly. I said, wow, that is a big responsibility and a big change, because I was CEO of my own company. And I said, I have to think about it and talk to the other founder, co-founder, and maybe some very large customers. They said, oh, of course, this is the biggest decision in your life. You have to think about it. I will call you back in 1 hour for your final decision. So that was one of the most important hours in my life, for sure, because in 1 hour I had to make that big decision. But I took the leap because I thought it's always best to regret the things that you have done than to regret the things that you didn't. So I put away my fear of the unknown and put it into energy of something completely new. And actually it worked out very well for me. So you have to also, with a lot of luck, probably, but I was an entrepreneur in politics, which all the parliamentary journalists at the time, they betted on me. I was ranked the highest by far, that I would be, at that time, the state secretary, the first member of the cabinet that had to resign. And some said in 1 month, some in 3, some in 1 year. That was the longest, I think, in 1 year. But for sure, I would be the first cabinet member to resign, because yeah, you have an entrepreneur, no political experience, responsible for the tax administration. As you know, that is like a field in the Netherlands where a lot of cabinet members have to resign on. It's a very dangerous place. But eventually it worked out. I was even named a few years later finance minister, as also a reward for the things that I done for the tax administration. Then that was in the big financial crisis, the banking crisis. So I had my share of crisis as well. And then I decided to go back to business and leave the politics, because it was super interesting. But if you do it too much, too long, it's also a bit addictive. You have to work extremely long hours, which is fine. But it becomes like your life completely. It is completely all consuming. And I wanted also at some point in time back to business.
Yeah, I still remember that story that you met Bush, because
yeah,
the prime minister was sick, I guess. Or he had to.
No, even worse, his father died unfortunately during our trip. So I was only state secretary at that time, not even the finance minister yet. But I was able to substitute the finance minister on the very first G20, the largest conference internationally since 1944, the Yalta conference. That was the largest conference in the world in 2008, amidst the start of the banking crisis. So all the big government leaders were coming together at the White House with President Bush. And then I was able to substitute the finance minister, but he absolutely could not come, together with Prime Minister Balkenende. And then, unfortunately, because of his father's death, he had to go back immediately when we landed in Washington. And then something like the designated survivor or something. I was the only member of cabinet at that time in the United States present with, in 20 minutes, a new conference starting. So I was, because of there was a very good relationship with Balkenende and Bush, I was able to substitute the government leader. So in 24 hours, I was promoted twice, now as a substituting government leader. And then, well, actually, I know very well. I was a little bit hasty in getting on the stairs of the White House. They were a little bit, it was raining, so it was a little bit slippery. And I almost fell. I skated towards Bush, and then he caught me. And then we had our photograph. And still that photograph was discussed weeks after, because of this strange situation, I had the upper hand, and it was the only supposedly government leader that I had the upper hand with Bush. It was not my intention, by the way. But yeah, it was a very fun moment to have.
Yeah, we are not going to talk about politics today. We are maybe a bit about numbers, statistics, but not about the financial part of you. Yuri, yeah, it's your third, fourth, fifth time maybe, but Yuri van Geest is famous because of the best-selling book ever, I think, in the world. It's in the top 10 of the world's best-selling books, Exponential Organizations. Yeah, introduce yourself in short, because you're doing more now these days. And
well, I started with e-commerce in 1997 with a research project on XML. So that's a long way back. That's also when I met Jan Kees, I think a little bit after. But basically, background, Singularity University, last 10 years, brought it to Europe, in Holland. And I wrote a book, Exponential Organizations, now mainly focusing on the impact of technology organizations on commerce. So that's why we are here today, in short.
Yeah, and there's a link. We really want to tell you about the link with music, what you discovered the last year, last couple of months, and you're really, tell me more about that.
Yeah, so I'm DJing, so I'm also into the music business as a side project, and I see a lot of similarities with the things we will talk about today, e-commerce, music, what's the new platform that's evolving online, or platforms, how can you make money, how can you do business online as a musician, also as festival owners, right? I think that's very interesting to think about.
Thank you. Thank you, people, for joining us. More people we have now in this webinar. Let's start, because we don't have much time to talk about the 5 biggest trends, but we really want to clarify what's happening online, what do we see, and how can we adapt to that as entrepreneurs, as corporates. So please, young Kees, let's talk about the first trend, what we see.
Well, not in a particular order which one of the most important one, but still I would, at the moment, and I think we will talk about the big pink elephant in the room later, also COVID-19, because for sure this has demonstrated a lot of disruption, but also enticed other business models, but for sure a fueling of the business models. I had some yesterday, the latest data in, and then we see that in 3 months of COVID this year, the growth in B2B e-commerce was as large as the 10 years before that in 3 months. So that's an enormous spike. In 3 months, the same B2B, especially B2B, not being able to send representatives to people, etc. They had to completely change. In B2C, that already happened, but COVID-19 for sure also fueled a big change there. But later on that, because I think it's more important also to talk about the global and the sustainable trends. And then I think 2020, besides COVID-19, of course, in the last few years, I have to start with social commerce. And of course, everybody is talking about social media, and social media is important. We have seen influencers that are pushing e-commerce. And by the way, when I'm talking about social commerce, I'm not talking about the marketing through social media, which a lot of people still think about social media, because yes, that has happened for 10 years already, and also has become very important as a marketing channel. But I'm talking about direct sales through social commerce. And there's 2 elements of that, very interesting, completely different. First of all, leveraging your celebrity status and having crowds of followers, hundreds, thousands, millions of followers, and monetize that into pushing products, selling products directly to customers. Make your own perfume line, make your own cosmetics line. If you're a celebrity, you're able to leverage much more than before. In the physical world, on social commerce, you're able to leverage and use that as a statement, or endorse social commerce directly with a link and get as an affiliate money for that as well. But there's a second one element which is also important, and I would even call that the democratizing commerce, and that you see now young people, 15, 16 of age, girls that are able to make their bespoke clothing or handbags. Maybe they just buy from a Chinese website, Alibaba or AliExpress. They buy something, they modify it a bit, they customize it a bit, and then in small quantities, but at good margins actually, they sell through social commerce as a medium. It's a very cheap way of marketing and selling your product compared to traditional e-commerce platforms. So social commerce is more about celebrities and endorsing and monetizing your celebrity status. It's also about the democratizing of e-commerce as well, and enabling people that just have a startup, making a few bags, and already actually can quite make a bit of money. I've talked with a 50-year-old girl that makes like 20 times her normal what she would have as a pocket money, and so actually she already made more than a minimum wage, much more, with only 1 or 2 days per week doing social commerce online. So that is also social commerce. So social commerce is more than that, but it is for sure, in the last few years, it is one of the 5 biggest trends that I see in commerce, and that's why I want to start with that one.
Is it a chance, an opportunity for people who lost their jobs at the moment and are looking their own ways to?
Well, yes, of course. The reason that I hesitate a little bit is because typically I don't see that as the best only driver. So you need also to have a bit more motivation than only losing your job. But at the same time, yes, I think every crisis creates its own opportunity. So yes, if you can deal with this crisis, and of course, for sure, we know that shops have been closed for a while, now have reopened, but still people are a little bit wary of them. In some countries, there's still limitations on it. So create opportunity because of this crisis, and but not only think about what you like yourself. It's always the golfer that starts a golf club store, and it's the one that has a fishery hobby that wants to start in fishery appliances. Do a little bit more market research on that. Not only look at yourself and your own buying behavior, but yes, in general, I think everybody can start, everybody can try. It's a low entry barrier. And you can use, but you can already start creating a channel on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram to gain audience and to talk about it. Because I would, my preference would be start with the content first, not try to sell, because that is, start with the content first, create a platform. For example, I know somebody that started a gluten informational social commerce channel, and if you have gained authority, then people will ask, oh, where do you buy this, and how do you do, and how do you make it yourself? Can we buy that somewhere? And then you have the authority also to use it to sell on the platform as well. So it's also about content. Social commerce is also about content. Use content to drive commerce, not the other way around.
Yuri, how do you see that this particular trend?
Well, I think that's a very promising one. It makes a lot of sense because there's a lot of upsides for individuals and not a lot of downsides. So I think this will grow. But I would like to add a few other e-commerce trends that I see. One is the re-emergence of group buying, not just in China, but across the world, beyond Groupon, for example, especially for, let's say, lower income groups or territories. Also, what I see is a re-emergence of rental of clothing, for example, instead of buying. Why? Because people don't want to own stuff, but just to access it. I think that's an important trend as well in commerce in broad categories, I would say. Also, I would say there is a re-emergence of second-hand markets, right? You call it re-commerce in jargon. So that goes beyond eBay, but how can you make it more attractive, more sexy to, also for sustainability purposes, besides the lower price, to buy second-hand products? I think Gen Z, let's say the youngest generation, they are much more in tune with sustainability, more than millennials or my generation. So I think this is the growth market. And then also, I would say, also related to music, I'm a big believer because of COVID of live streaming, right? Also for clothing or anything, right? You can sell using live streaming. If you look, for example, at Tomorrowland in music, they sold almost 2 million tickets, while normally they sell 60,000 tickets, right, for their largest dance festival in the world. Now 2 million tickets with a lower price point, right, from 400 euros to 20 or 40 or something. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty interesting, right? So there's a huge demand for live streaming on online versions for DJs like John Digweed. He has like 300,000 followers, right? Just doing online DJ sessions every week since March. It's stunning. And what I noticed is there's a lot of value, untapped value in terms of e-commerce or loyalty and retention because of the interaction between the customers among themselves, right? Any live stream event, also for clothing, but also among the interaction between the audience or the customers with, let's say, the DJ or the speaker or the owner or the leader, right? I think there's a lot of value, untapped value there, and we can leverage those data points in e-commerce from the bottom to the top. And finally, I would say there's a lot of shifts going on also, what I see personally, from, let's say, social media opinion leaders to, let's say, opinion customers, because it's more authentic, right? You pay influencers to promote a product. People are, savvy about that. They don't like that normally because it's commercial. We move from commercial to authenticity, right? Also in social media. So I would say smaller audiences, more authentic. You don't pay people to talk about your product. You just want an honest product review. So you give them the product maybe at a privilege, time advantage, and they talk about it, right? They give an honest review because they're already a small-scale niche domain expert. And I think that's a big shift we will see in B2B first, also B2C later on, a shift to authenticity, to add on the shifts that young Kees talked about.
Yeah. And connected with what young Kees said, and then what I see in the chat, the question of Roel, thank you for sharing the question. Is it necessary to have a good content strategy in this? How do you see it?
For me, or?
Yeah.
I would say yes. Yes, I think that's omni-channel, right? So the way I do it, I'm a speaker and a thought leader, whatever. So I try to be present in key media once in a while, but it's also about who you connect with one-on-one. So you can have a very public presence and image, right? Identity, that's important. But you can also do it in a more subtle way, the way I do it, right? More one-on-one, small-scale sessions, right? Connecting the thought leaders globally with Conscious Learning Tribe is very small scale. But these are high-impact mavens and connectors. That's also a way to spread your content and to do commerce later on.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing some questions in the chat, everyone. I see some questions we will talk about later about it. So let's go to the second trend, distributed commerce, young Kees.
Yeah, distributed commerce actually touches also upon the two elements that Yuri already mentioned. For example, group buying and re-commerce. Distributed commerce is actually it's my name for several sub-trends, because e-commerce has generated a completely new opportunity of doing business. It's also becoming headless. So headless commerce, probably some of the audience also have heard about that. That means that your shopping layer, your presentation layer is completely detached from the technology below that, the back-end technology, but also from the logistical support. So you can just start very easily your own, for example, the celebrity in social commerce that doesn't want to do anything with technology or with distribution. Very easily, very low entry barrier, you can start your own commerce. But it's more than that. It's also about, again, also re-commerce of vintage products. It makes it very easy to recycle that, but also think about that you have a very, very specific hobby and you want to collect that very specific item, and it's a seller in Guatemala, and on eBay you have found it and you buy it because you trust eBay, you see the reviews, you can pay through eBay, and it will be internationally shipped by the support of eBay. And then that is something completely unknown, of course, before e-commerce happened. So now there's completely new business models. AliExpress, amazing, isn't it? That the package cost of sending a package of AliExpress is less than when you send a package from Rotterdam to Amsterdam by PostNL. And PostNL actually has to deliver it. They don't like it that much for that prices, but that's part of international treaties that China still treats as a developing country. So they have to supply extremely low package and postal tariffs. So it's weird that it's so cheap to buy directly from a Chinese vendor. That something a few years ago was completely unimaginable, that you would buy an item worth only $1 or $2 or $3, that you could buy it more economically on that distance. But also, of course, direct to consumer, D2C, and other B2B trends. Again, I already mentioned, because of COVID-19, B2B really has lifted up. It rocketed this year, but also other models will be directly explored. You can do business as a business, but you do not want to touch the products, perhaps. Or you do want to touch the products and you enable others to do the marketing and the product. So you see the vertical binding that we have seen in the classical world will be now much more easy to split up in different elements. Somebody is very good in logistics, somebody is very good in sourcing products, somebody is good in warehousing, and some are good in marketing. Now in distributed commerce, it enables, with a lot of technology, to do in a different way of business. Globally agnostic, easy internationally, but also using your own strength. Direct to consumer means your business can directly, you buy it and it will be directly sent as a drop shipment to you. Not with all the hassle of cross-docking or something like that, or all the other costs. But also, look at the software trend, SaaS, software as a service. Now we also see that emerging in e-commerce as well. That you have things that are recurring, like shaving equipment or cosmetics or perfume stuff, that are put in a subscription model. Look at also Amazon is doing that. If you buy something that is recurring, like for example tablets or minerals or vitamins, then they offer you a price, but also they offer you a price if you subscribe to vitamins at the lower end, and then automatically at your convenience, and of course to the profit of Amazon as well, it will be sent automatically every 3 months or every 6 months, depending on the schedule that you have chosen. So also X as a service will also enter this the e-commerce trend, and all this is very interesting, very exciting, and that is what I call distributed commerce. A complete new way of doing business, because commerce has enabled us in a globally agnostic way. There's no geographical boundaries. It also becomes agnostic from the technology. It becomes agnostic from your inventory. It enables you to split up the process and work together in a much more lean and mean way, with friction cost much lower than ever before. Because in the past, this was not possible, because every chain element had a lot of friction costs. So that's why big retailers did their own sourcing, did their own warehousing, did their own logistics, because on every element they profit a little bit of the margin that otherwise the vendor would have profited from. And that was at their advantage. Like 80 years ago, General Electric having its own plans for aluminum, its own plans for creating electricity, but we have abandoned that world in the physical world. Now we also will see in the e-commerce world that we will also be able to much more focus on our strengths. Some are very good in marketing, some are very good in logistics, some are very good in sourcing, and this distributed commerce enables you to benefit all.
You're talking, we have a lot of people from all over the world, and you talked about AliExpress. You talk about all kind of things. I see in the chat, of course, from how do they do that? That cheap. And a lot of people think, do we win from China? Do we win from USA? Or do we win from? But you said from working more together and find your own focus where you're good at. So you can maybe share where we as Dutch people must be more connected with the focus. Maybe yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, if never let your fears influence your behavior. Turn your fear of the unknown into an energy of doing better. And the second advice here I have, embrace rather than counter-argue these trends. Because I think you can do your benefit from it. There's a lot of examples of young people, also in the Netherlands or other European countries, that actually benefited from sourcing very cheaply on Alibaba, because in the old world they had to go to wholesalers in the Netherlands at a much higher expense. Now they can do directly to consumers and buy more cheaply at almost the same price at the warehousing that is buying 10,000 items more than they. There's only a very small marginal cost. So it also enables new business models for people that see opportunity rather than risk. That also make use of that. So I would say embrace, think about in this new world how you can do better and how you can profit. And for sure, it will be, because there's also a lot of disadvantages of only buying at AliExpress, etc. There are, I think, we let it happen as the Western world, and now we have to reinvent ourselves again. One interesting, just to support that, industry 3.0 or industry 4.0. Actually, for the first time in 40 years in the Netherlands, industry is on the rise again. After 40 years losing to Asia every year in a row. Why is that? Because of robotization, automatization. We have now become more competitive than ever before. Competitive levels are close to Asian production levels, and you're able to shorten the supply chain, to do mass customization, to do very quickly in 3D printing, make something, and then be able to deliver it the same day. That's why Amazon Prime is such a success. It's the same day delivery. Also here in the UE, I'm a Prime member, of course. And it's when you are addicted to same day delivery, and you don't want to wait 3 to 6 weeks on an AliExpress order. So I think we have to reinvent ourselves and do as the industry did. Actually, now they see that they could benefit from these technology trends, and now the Dutch industry and also European industry is, for the first time in decades, growing again, because now we can compete to low-cost countries.
Thank you. Yuri, I see some questions. I see a lot of questions in the chat also for you. Maybe I can answer Begga, if I pronounce it right. Thank you, Begga. Yuri, which e-business will grow exponentially during the coming 5 to 10 years?
That's a great question. I would say education, training. Why? Because it's still quite early stage, even though it has been around for a long time. But it
you mean e-learning? Because you mean e-learning on?
Yeah. So because of Corona, this will intensify. There's also a ton of organic growth in education and training because of the speed of change. For example, I set up a movement 4 years ago in Holland called the Buitenboordmotor. We have to retrain 1.4 million people in Holland in the next 10 years, right? So that's already a huge market. A piece of that will be online because of COVID, but also because that's the way to scale, right? So I would say education and training, retraining, yeah.
You see that so well. You are the president of Easy Generator, Jan Kees.
Yeah. Fortunately, when this we didn't know for sure when the COVID-19 crisis was there. I have two SaaS businesses, Sauna Commerce, that's B2B commerce, and Easy Generator. It's an authoring tool to make very easy your own courses. And we were not sure what the impact was. So we were a little, because you never, to be honest, you never know. Of course, some people always say they know, but you never know for sure. And what we see in B2B commerce, actually the first 2 or 3 months, there was delay of, because companies saw the strength of e-commerce, but everybody was afraid to touch their own systems. So they didn't order new systems, but Easy Generator, and now, by the way, it's booming also. So because B2B commerce, of course, is booming, so now companies have to invest. But Easy Generator, from the first day, we saw a huge rise. So our current year-to-date growth is already 82% recurring growth. So it is, we have to cope. There's also, it gives a lot of challenges, of course, because you have to scale your organization, your customer support, and your developing capacity. But yeah, we're doing great. So fortunately, we started also here in Dubai our business to support the growth, because it's much easier to recruit new people here from around the world than in Europe, because of the visa process here is much easier. But yeah, it's with a bit of luck again. We are doing great with e-learning and the authoring tool Easy Generator.
Beautiful. Trend number 3, Yuri.
Yeah.
Let's start with Yuri.
Okay, great.
Personalized e-commerce. How do you see that? Maybe a lot of people are a little bit afraid. All the data, of course, what we share, we don't know what's coming in the next 5 to 10 years.
No, I think a lot has already been said, but to keep it short, this will intensify. Why? Because if you think about public goods, right? So where image is important and it's a high involvement product, right? Then personalization makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of value add for the customers. So this will intensify personalized experiences, personalized products and services, content, yes. And also, most importantly, amplified, as 𝐁-𝐸 said, by 3D and 4D printing. 4D printing is more advanced than 3D printing. Thermoplastics in the jargon. It allows us to personalize cars, right? Already for the last 5 years in China. This will intensify going forward. So I think it's a key trend.
Kees?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And well, yeah, I put out the 5, but Yuri have said it actually very good. It's 2 elements here again. It's personalize your experience and also targeting. Sometimes it's good, to be honest. Sometimes still it annoys me a little bit that you get retargeted after you bought the product, and they say, how many dishwashers do you think I need? Really? I just bought a dishwasher. Now the next week you're going to be retargeted.
The people selling those flight tickets.
Yeah, flight tickets as well. Keep coming when you have bought it. So of course it has to do also with a little bit of the privacy, because sometimes the data cannot be shared. But still, it feels a little bit awkward. So we're not there yet. But yes, it's much better than it has been, to be honest. At least sometimes we complain, and sometimes it's not right yet, but it is better. Targeting, personalization, the way we do it is better than it has before. And big data analytics will become much more important also in the future. And even everybody is talking about artificial intelligence, AI. At the moment, it's still rule-based. Most of the AI solutions that I've seen, but it will be there. It will be self-learning at some point in time, and then also that will improve. And secondly, yes, it also will enable, as Yuri explained, mass customization. So it's not anymore like you buy a product that is logistically already made maybe months ago or at least weeks ago, and then you have the choice about 3 colors or 5 colors. No, mass customization means you configure on the web and it will be produced exactly bespoke to your requirements. That is not possible in the traditional world, and this model will also grow very rapidly. Yeah.
just a step out. You were talking about the flying, the flight industry. There's also a step. You joined the board of KLM, Jan Kees.
Yeah.
And
before COVID-19, I didn't knew at that point in time that it would happen. I would have done it anyway, because it's in times of crisis, I think, that you have to also to try to do your best to support companies. And KLM, Royal KLM, of course, is a proud Dutch company. It's the oldest airline, by the way, in the world, still operating under its own name. 100 years.
100, just 100 years.
Yeah, now 101, but last year was 100. We celebrated 100 years, and but this impact it's bizarre. It's losing. It's a capex, so capital expenditure, so fixed cost, heavy industry. You know, you have to buy planes or lease planes that you still have to pay. So it's a very high cost industry, and from day one to another day, losing 90% of your passengers, not for a few days or a week, like in the disruption of the volcano in Iceland many years ago. No, for months now. There's no industry I can see surviving that on its own. So you see everywhere airlines are really struggling. And it takes also longer than at the moment, of course, than expected, because it will be next year before we see real in that the COVID-19 will be really in such a situation under control that travel restrictions are not there anymore. By the way, the flying in itself there's been just research also about it. It's actually the flying itself, because of the way the airflows work and is recirculated. It's one of the safest places to be in the COVID-19
my wife flies for KLM. She had to do the flight safety, and I watched a small video about how safe it is, how clean the air is in the airplane.
Yeah. And it's a vertical airflow in an airplane. So if it's that is the system that it has, is actually, it's also almost made for this type of crisis, because airline industry already faced, especially in Asia, different virus crises. So they have been preparing for this, and actually the environment in an airplane is as to the research is now, and also supported by real infection evidence. It's one of the safest places to be. But because of the restrictions of entering into countries, people are not flying almost at the moment. Yeah,
that's the case. So it's the government again, government rules. Let's go back to the e-commerce side, the visual commerce. It's also what I see with VR, with all kind of things. Yuri. Who is the in what country we see are developing? Is it Holland? Is it China? Is it USA? Where is this trend coming from? Who are the?
Now, not from Europe, in my view. It's mostly driven by China. Most of the trends are driven by China in a broad sense. So, for example, you can do augmented reality using your camera or your smartphone or laptop, and you can test your lipstick, right? So that these are simple applications, but I think this will become more mainstream. It's easy to do. A lot of upside, no downside. So yeah, that's one example driven by China.
Jan Kees?
Yeah, absolutely. It's ordering products, even if you can send them back, you know, that most of the e-commerce allows you to do that. But some of them are high impact, and you don't know how that clothing fits you or that lipstick suits you. But also that furniture, I've seen very great examples also to place furniture into your home, that you can just make a snapshot of your home and then place that furniture in it. It will lower the risk barrier for buyers, and anything that lowers risk barrier for buyers will enable them to buy easier online, because that is one of the things of e-commerce still today. You cannot touch it, feel it, and some products have a higher requirement of being touched and felt or looked at than otherwise. But you will see it in any industry. Tesla is using it obviously for configuring their cars. Many are doing it now. So it is an important driver to support customer acceptance of e-commerce. And I also agree with Yuri that China and other parts of Asia actually are ahead of Western Europe. Now, living myself in the United Arab Emirates, sometimes I get a question by Dutch people, for example, a bit conservative Dutch people. They ask, why there? Because it's so great here. Well, no, actually, then you haven't been in Singapore or in Dubai or in Shanghai lately, because really Europe is becoming, if you do not, if you are not stopping the complacency in Europe, Europe will be a second world or second tier region. So the developments in the modern parts of the Middle East, like the UAE, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Shanghai, Singapore, are much more advanced. Things are cleaner, secure, more secure. Technology is used really for creating better life experience for the residents in those countries. And also we see that in commerce. So sometimes I think Europeans can be a little bit complacent, to be honest, because yes, in the old world, they had the lead. For example, in telco industries, great example, 3G Europe was leading, as in 2G and 1G, GSM. 4G, the US took the lead, Europe second, Asia third. 5G, Asia has become by far the leader in 5G. China every week activates 50% of all the base stations in 5Gs in the world. 50% of in all the market. Imagine that. 50% of all 5G base stations. And then America second in 5G. Europe is now third in place in 5G. Here in the UAE, we already have for almost a year, we have nationwide 5G coverage. In Europe, it has to start yet. The Netherlands just a few weeks ago did the first auction of actually the 700 megahertz frequency, which is not really 5G. The real 5G frequency will be there in 2 years. Will be auctioned in 2 years. Auctioned. Let's imagine that. So yes, we have to stop being cultural, conservative, and thinking that Europe is still in the lead. Please look at other parts of the world, and start, of course, with China, but also other parts in Asia, and you will learn a lot, I think.
Thank you. Yuri, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I fully agree, as people who know me will recognize. But the visual commerce is also about sharing, young case, because the lipstick or the clothing. So the social aspect in that sense of commerce becomes more interesting as well, for the social validation or fun, entertainment. It's all additional in my view. Yeah. In terms of other trends I see, very briefly, visual commerce, you can just see anything on TV of TV commerce, right? Smart TVs. You can just select an item in a program. Hey, I like this hoodie. Boom, you can buy it. This also becomes way more easy than, let's say, 5 years ago. And also, I would say that it's an outline trend, but I think if you are a brand without a purpose to contribute to a better world, also within e-commerce, you will have a hard place in the next 10 years. Move away from just making money to purpose-driven initiatives and brands, authentic purpose, right? A higher goal to create a better world. If you don't tap into that, whatever you are in the supply chain or value chain, you will be in trouble increasingly. And I'm not talking about ecological inclusiveness or sustainability or climate, I'm also talking about water scarcity, food scarcity, social inequality. All these topics become more important also in e-commerce.
Talk about the link with climate change. People are more and more aware of it because of COVID. What they see linking to food and climate change. Maybe it's a good connection. So one of the first questions, what's happening on that area on e-commerce? Yuri.
Yeah, actually, I've been doing this for a lot of years now. 7 years. I've worked, do training for the CEOs of Westland, the food business in Holland. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on, right? The main trend is vertical farming, which allows us to create more sustainable, cheap, and more consistent, high quality food relative to the alternatives in the past, right? So that's the biggest trend. We see a move in line with the trends that 𝐁-𝐸𝐴 talked about earlier, right? You have this horizontalization of the market. You have all these specialists that normally you have vertical integration. Now it's all gone, right? You have separate players. Because of the speed of change also in the food is so high, and the new technologies are disrupting the vertical integrated companies. What I see is a trend towards democratization, decentralization as well, just like e-commerce, as 𝐁-𝐸𝐴 talked about. Soon you can grow your own food, hydroponics, aeroponics, restaurants that create their own vertical farm. Think about this. This is a fascinating statistic I found out a few weeks ago. Because of COVID, the retail real estate will plummet by 40 to 50% in the next few years, right? A lot of free space there. Then you have commercial real estate. 30% will be vacant because remote work. So what will happen, in my view, and I'm already tapping into that with a few of my clients, how can we refurbish those real estate for retail and for commercial into vertical farms, right? In cities. In Holland, right, and also beyond. So I think that's a big shift we can see in terms of food.
Last trend, the multi-device commerce. 𝐁-𝐸𝐴.
Yeah, Yuri already made the example of a TV device embedded in your favorite TV show that you can also, with a smart TV, you can easily see and say, okay, I want to order that directly. But also it's, of course, obviously about mobile commerce, multi-device commerce. We have seen the rise, especially with Gen Z and millennials. They prefer now buying through a mobile device rather than a full-fledged website on a laptop. But also, especially in the US now first, but we'll see that also in other regions, voice shopping, especially for recurring items, you know? Oh yeah, I need this or need that. You can ask Alexa or Google Assistant to reorder that. It will not be people ask me, will that replace blah, blah, blah? No. It's always when you make an argument for the one, it's always easy to defeat with the question, will it replace this and that? No, it will not replace. Everything is added as a selection, as an option to other parts of commerce. Voice for me will be much more about recurring simple things that you just, as you asked, to put a light on, something like that. Reorder your water supply or anything else, you know?
Right.
But not browse and do the experience and the full, of course not. But, and also TV in your favorite show, it will not replace other elements of commerce, but it will add. Perhaps with the exception of the mobile, I see that mobile commerce does replace a full, for the very young people. It replaces their experience on using a website, because interestingly enough, they are so used to watching a small screen. They even like watch. I don't actually, but they watch Netflix on that. And I have a lot of devices myself, but still I prefer a large screen than, to be honest, than a small screen. So that's one of the few things that I sometimes feel a little bit old. because that's that part I didn't get yet to watch 1.5 hour movie on a small screen. But for the rest, we will see a lot of commerce. I also order now more and more through the app on my phone than on a website, because it's e-commerce is doing business any place, anytime, everywhere. So you will see that you will become device agnostic. Use any device, will generate e-commerce, and you have to be sure that you're ready for that, because still I see at best websites ready for mobile. If they are, then they already feel that they are very modern. But there are so many things, so many devices that in the future will drive e-commerce.
Are we not a little bit afraid of to be overloaded with all kind of new things?
Well, that's a good point. As you know, I also worked at KPN, a CFO, a telecoms company, and then we always had a discussion, are people not using their mobile phone too much? I think it is everything, as everything, is about moderation. Of course, we do not have to exaggerate, but the most important thing is that you are in control. You are the boss of your own behavior. Maybe some people cannot cope with that responsibility, then you are especially young children sometimes, so you have to help them and educate them. But in the end, I'm not very pessimistic, because more than ever before, also these trends have empowered us, I would say. It's also about consumer empowerment. It has empowered us to select the right channel that we prefer, and not that the supplier says you have to use, you know? So in the end, I think as consumers, as buyers, we will win.
So as consumers, do you see a more happier time for all of us, where we spend more time with the family and?
But then, well, that is a very dangerous debate, because that really depends on how you cope with it and how you deal with it. And I see families dealing with that very well, and they also have moments that they don't use the phone if they have family moments. And I think you have to, it does not come automatically, that, to be honest. So you have to be aware of also the challenges and the negative points that it will bring. Social media also has brought negative elements. It didn't make people necessarily happy, to be honest, because you see on social media always the nice stuff. You see never people, or almost never, posting every day that they go to a boring college on university, or to a boring job, that they say, I'm again on my boring job. No, especially when they are experiencing an adventurous holiday, or they are doing something very interesting, they post of themselves. And people that cannot place that in the right way are becoming more unhappy because of that. So we really have to think about that as well. Not everything is better, but you are in control if you are able to cope with those things. But that is an important caveat. We have to educate people for that.
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's what we missed with social media. When do you use it? Why do you use it?
Exactly.
And I think that's connected with education for sure. Roel, I saw your question twice. What's the biggest technical trend that pushes e-commerce into the next level, Yuri?
Very briefly, being mindful of time. First of all, AI, demand forecasting, supply chain optimization, the whole stack, also for sourcing customers, by the way, recently. AI, then drones and robots, right, in the back end, the warehousing, also for delivery, last mile drones. Not now, but soon. I think these are the biggest ones.
Beautiful. China, we didn't speak about America a lot. So what's happening there? What do we see there? Do we all have to focus on what's happening in China and learn from it and collaborate in a better way? Jan Kees?
No, never focus only on one region. I think we have under-focused on China the last few years and over-focused on Europe and the US. But the US still remains important, although I have my concerns about what's happening there. And populism, which also in Europe, by the way, is rising. And the country in certain elements is slipping away in terms of public infrastructure, quality of life, etc. But the US by nature is extremely resilient. They have the ability to overcome almost every crisis and rethink in a creative way. A little bit more, to be honest, than Europe. So I think US still is very important in terms of especially creative and like social media trends and the largest, some of the largest in the Western world companies are all still there and have their headquarters there. So it's important to look at what's happening there from a trend perspective and how they deal with that. But having said that, I do feel, as also Yuri explained, we have been under-focusing on some other regions. So that doesn't mean that we have to focus only on Asia, on China or the Middle East, but we have to be aware that there is a huge growth and technology happening. And what, for example, Tencent and WeChat has done in China with a completely integrated experience, like with Uber, Amazon, Facebook and WhatsApp actually in one app, one location. That is also very interesting. So let's try not to shift completely to one reason, but balance it a bit more.
Yuri?
I would also like to include India. I've been to India 10 times last 10 years. Mumbai, a lot of changes there. Bangalore, of course. So I expect leapfrog innovations, quantum leaps in India in the next 5 years as well. Also in e-commerce, by the way.
It's 60 minutes now, and I told you it is a challenge to really. we could have organized a webinar for each trend, but I hope you people in the chat, thank you for joining us, that you learned a bit of every trend, what is going on. I still saw a lot of questions, and we will figure out if we can still answer them after the webinar.
I have one comment about it. I see a question about the Minister of Innovation and Transformation.
That's a link with politics again. So.
Highly necessary.
Yeah. The last thing, Yuri, give the people in the chat some last takeaways. What can they do now to be prepared for what's going on in e-commerce?
Now, I give a more abstract but strategic insight. I believe COVID is just a wake-up call, right? We have a biodiversity crisis, climate crisis coming in already in the next 10 years in some cases. So if you do commerce or e-commerce and you don't think about your purpose as an organization or as a human being, you are in trouble in the next 10 years. That's one. Second, as a result of these crises, we will move to self-sufficient systems, regenerative cultures, right? I'm fully engaged in that. Decentralization, democratization of everything, right? You become the CEO of anything in your life increasingly, right? In a localized, community-based fashion. Tapping into tech platforms in the back end, but in the front end, it's all localized and more communal. I think that's the future, right? It's more economical, more sustainable, more ownership, more happiness, more anti-fragile, more resilient in that sense, right? So we have to think about how we can use e-commerce to deal with the different crises emerging going forward.
Kees?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I was also running through the chat. Very interesting, by the way, very interactive and engaging people. Thank you for that. But no, aware of time, I agree with Yuri, and it was great to talk about e-commerce trends in general. I love it. It's my original passion from when I studied more than 25 years ago. I started one of the first e-commerce companies in the Netherlands, and now I'm doing it internationally. So it was a great, and also to meet Yuri again after so many years. So yeah, thank you for organizing it.
For sure, it was great having you both from Rotterdam, but actually you were born in Zeeland.
Yeah.
So, but live your life in Rotterdam. We for sure, you and I are coming to visit you. Maybe you can show the people in the chat your view from your new apartment in Dubai. Can you?
I can turn my camera if that's what you mean. I don't know if you can see it.
That's the view.
Yeah.
Bad luck.
That's the Palm Jumeirah Islands. Yeah, it is a nice location. Yeah. And there's a lot of technology startups here. So when you are here, I will also with the Dutch embassy and the consul general here from the Netherlands. And actually, it will be Expo 2020 next year. That has been postponed because of COVID. And there's also a lot of technology companies here. So I'm happy to demonstrate you the thriving opportunities of Dubai. And actually, a lot of Dutch and European entrepreneurs have started here.
Yeah. For sure. Jan Kees, maybe we do a catch up later in the year, beginning next year about this webinar, because there's so much to say. We don't know where it goes with COVID. For our next webinar, it's on November 2nd at 10 a.m. Same time. We fly from Dubai to Singapore. We have Ritu G. Marish. She's the author of Leaders Block. With the foreword of Marshall Goldsmith, and talk about the breakability of leadership, that we must more be open to share our feelings, because even leaders cry. That's what she said. So love to have you also in the chat then, to interact with her. And thank you everyone. Thank you for having you. Thank you for having you, Jan Kees. Thank you for having you again, Yuri. It was great. It felt really great. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Okay. Bye-bye.